You don't need your required minimum distribution, but it is required. What should you do with it? I've got 3 planning ideas. That and more coming up. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. So required minimum distribution is required, whether you need that money or not. And so here's the deal. As you've contributed, or maybe a parent or something contributed and you inherited it, contributed pre-tax to their IRA or pre-tax to their 401k, or received a company match that has always been pre-tax up until you've got that choice coming soon where that could be Roth. But for all the pre-tax dollars, your contribution is pre-tax, meaning you get a deduction on it. And then all the investment activity, the growth on it, and yes, it goes up and down, but the dividends, the interest, all that's tax sheltered. Then when you withdraw the dollars, that's when that money lands on your tax return and is taxed. And once you turn age 59 and a half, you're eligible to withdraw those dollars, and you don't have to pay, you have to include it as income, but there's no 10% penalty. Well, if you don't need the money, then fantastic. But by a certain age, the IRS says, listen, you've avoided tax on this money for too long. We're going to force you to start drawing some money out, and that's the required minimum distribution. Used to be at age 70 and a half for forever, used to be 70 and a half. And then starting in 1/1 of 2020, the Secure Act 1.0 moved that age to 72. The year you turn 72, that's when you needed to start your required minimum distribution. And then now with the Secure Act 2.0, they've moved that to age 73. It's on its way to 75. But at that age, that's when you're required to draw at least a minimum amount out of your pre-tax retirement accounts. If you're drawing out more than that, fantastic, no problem. You've met your quota. You've reached and exceeded that minimum. You're fine. But for those of you that aren't drawing money out, and you might even say, I don't need it. I don't need this money. I don't want this extra money just laying in my checking account. I've got too much cash in there anyway. Or maybe you're helping mom and dad and that's their situation. What should you do? What should you do with your required minimum distribution? Well, I've got 3 planning ideas for you. And the first one is, are you donating to charities? Are you giving to charities? Because if you are, then you could take your required minimum distribution and you could donate some of it, a chunk of it, all of it, whatever, directly to a charity through what's called a qualified charitable distribution. Did a video about this just recently and said, make sure that you get the order right. If you do that qualified charitable distribution first, it will count towards your required minimum distribution, okay? And so essentially what that means is you're having money sent directly from your IRA. This does not work with a 403b, a 401k. It's got to be directly from your IRA, sending it directly to the charity. When you do that, that money counts towards your required minimum distribution, okay? So it satisfies either a portion of it or all of it, depending on how much you donate through the qualified charitable distribution. But that income doesn't land on your tax return. It's not taxable to you. So there's no need for you to claim it on your tax return and then try and get a deduction for the donation to charity. So many people are not receiving that deduction anymore, not getting that benefit because you're not itemizing your tax return. We'll see if that continues. But this qualified charitable distribution is a way for you to say, well, wait a second, all along, I've been donating to the church, my 10%, or I not only donate to the church, but I also donate to a couple of causes I care about later in the year or at the end of the year, something like that. And you've been doing that out of your normal cash flow, out of your pension, Social Security, the other withdrawals that you're getting, your dividends, whatever, however you're doing it. And now you've reached this time where you're required to withdraw at least a minimum amount out of your IRA, and you don't need it, and you don't want it. Well, just change how you're doing your giving and have your giving come directly out of your IRA first through a qualified charitable distribution, and that will minimize or even eliminate your required minimum distribution and avoid the tax, essentially. So huge planning opportunity. If you don't need your RMD, or even if you do, consider doing a qualified charitable distribution. Now, if you've already done that, or say you're not charitably inclined and you're still in this situation where you say, I'm forced to draw this money out of my IRA, and I don't need the money. I don't want it landing in my checking account just sitting there. What should I do with it? Well, then the plain vanilla option then is to reinvest it into a non-IRA account. So an individual account, or if you're married, I'd suggest that be a joint account. And because you're age 72, 73, you're in that required minimum distribution age, I would make sure that there's a transfer on death on that account as well, so those dollars avoid probate. But essentially, again, it's required. It's required that you draw at least a minimum amount out of your IRA, and therefore, once you draw that money out, withhold the necessary taxes, instead of having that money land in your checking account and not do anything, send it to an investment account and reinvest those dollars. So, for example, just easy math here. If you're required to draw out 20 grand out of your IRA and you say, I don't need it, I've got plenty in my checking account, plenty in the savings account, I don't want this money, I wish I could just leave it there. Well, you're required to draw it out, so take the 20 grand out, save the appropriate amount for taxes, say it's 5 grand total for taxes, for federal and state taxes. Now take that 15 grand and transfer it into a non-IRA account and just have it be reinvested. Maybe even reinvested in the exact same way it was within your IRA. I would hope that you've got some tax efficient investment choices there, but then just reinvest it there. And then those dollars each year as you're taking your required minimum distribution, they can start piling up in that non-IRA account. If you've got a transfer on death, a TOD beneficiary listed, it'll avoid probate. You can invest it in a tax efficient way, and there you've got lots of flexibility with those dollars. So the plain vanilla way to, hey, I don't need this required minimum distribution. I've already done my qualified charitable distributions, or I'm not charitably inclined, then reinvesting those dollars into an individual or joint account. And then the third planning strategy, if you're required to draw money out of your IRA and you don't need it, is to pay it forward. And what I mean by that is, well, the first option, donate it to charity in a really tax efficient way. The second option is, well, you've got to take it out. If you don't need the money, just reinvest it for yourself. But the third option is to pay it forward, and that would be to reinvest it for the next generation. Well, how do you do that? Well, do you have kids or grandkids that are going to college? You're required to take this money out of your IRA, and all of a sudden you look and say, well, now it's no longer tax sheltered. Well, you could contribute that money into a 529 plan for your kids or grandkids. And all of a sudden that takes it from being in a tax sheltered account, growing tax deferred, you've got to take it out, but then puts it right back into a tax sheltered account to grow for your kids or your grandkids' financial future. And if it's for a 529 plan and then they use that money for qualified educational expenses, then it will grow tax deferred for them, and then that growth will come out tax free because it's for qualified educational expenses. So paying it forward would be contributing it to a 529 plan for your kids or grandkids. Or another option, paying it forward, contributing to your kids or grandkids' Roth IRA. Now you might say, well, how can I do that? I'm not eligible to do that. You're right, you're not. However, you're required to draw this money out of your IRA. Then you could talk to your child, your adult child, or your young adult grandchild and say, are you contributing enough to fully max out your Roth IRA? And if they say no, but they are eligible to contribute to a Roth IRA, gift this money to them and have it go into their Roth IRA. Now, if you're unsure if they're going to stick with it, you've got to talk to them, because even if you say, no, I'm going to open the Roth IRA for you, we're going to make this contribution together so that there's no way that they don't make the contribution. Technically, the Roth IRA, it's theirs, so they could then draw the money right back out. And so hopefully you've got your child, your grandchild's trustworthy and wanting to build their financial house and all that. And so getting the money, once again, getting it from your tax sheltered account of your IRA, required to take it out, then putting it into a tax sheltered for that next generation, or even the second generation, third generation, and having that money grow tax sheltered there. And then because it's a Roth IRA, your child or grandchild would then be able to draw the growth out of that tax free. That's a way to compound your required minimum distribution and lengthen the tax benefits of it. So there you go. I mean, those are, yes, you're required to take a minimum amount out of your IRA. And if you don't need it, those are 3 options. That's not your only options, but those are 3 great options to consider working with your certified financial planner. Do any of them make sense to you? Is there another strategy that makes even more sense? Work with your CFP on that. If you don't have a CFP on your team, contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or give us a call, 574-247-5898. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.